This is Elder Joker Shima Jinsai. I want to take this time because we're coming up on Black August Memorial. We all want to take this time to give y'all an overview of the comrade Jeffrey Khatari Galt. The reason why this is so vitally important, it was actually his passing which precipitated the creation of Black August Memorial and tangentially Black August Resistance. Well, who was Khatari? Khatari Jeffrey Patrick Galt was born in Los Angeles, California on December 13th, 1945. His parents were Cora Lee and Herbert Galt. He was the eldest son of 6 children at a time in history in Los Angeles, California, where racism glared at you even more direly than it does today in every area of people activity. Khatari was raised in Louisiana, an even more racist environment. Later, they moved to San Diego, California. He married a sister named Lupe Brown, who died on November 4th, 1974. Sometime later, he married a sister named Sakari, our comrade. But from his marriage with Lupe, he had 5 children. Khatari was in prison in March 1967 as a result of an unkept plea bargain in which he was promised a maximum sentence of 1 year out of county work for him. Because of his strong, consistent support of others around him, his fight against racist prison conditions and the horrendous abuse that brothers was under the gun of, for his consistent exposure of the inhumanity and cruel abuses which abounded in prison, Khatari was labeled by the pig a black militant. This militancy served him as he was under consistent attack from racist prisoners and racist cops. But it also served as an excuse for his continued confinement in San Quentin's notorious adjustment center, a place of racist torture, abuse, and isolation. He was held there for over 8 years. Khatari's original sentence was for a maximum of 10 years, but in 1972, he was framed and given a life sentence for a murder he didn't commit. His conviction was held to be illegal and unconstitutional by the Marin County Superior Court in August 1976. Nevertheless, his unjust and illegal imprisonment continued. You have to keep in mind that during this time period, it was the original emergence of the counterintelligence program, and they viewed comrades like Khatari and organizations like Jamal Political Military Party, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army as literally the greatest threat to this country and the continued dominance of capitalism globally. Nonetheless, this comrade never relented, and the second attempt was made to frame him up on charges of assault. That one was unsuccessful. Khatari was acquitted of all the charges by unanimous jury in November 1977. His confinement, unfortunately, in San Quentin's Adjustment Center continued. There was a total deprivation of a right to have any physical contact whatsoever with his family and friends on the outside. He couldn't get visits, couldn't see his wife, couldn't touch his children. But that comrade never relented. Khatari's death on August 1st, 1978 was the result of a severe head injury he sustained on the AC yard while playing football with his comrades, those he loved. The dilapidated conditions of the prison, there were pipes sticking out of the walls in various spots on the yard. And unfortunately, Khatari hit his head in one of those exposed pipes, right on the edge of it. That's not what killed him. Khatari could have easily survived his injury. However, the officials made Dragon stay over 2 wasted hours within the institutional hospital before taking him to a brain scan located at Ross Hospital, where medical incompetence provided no attention whatsoever in relation to his condition. They just let that comrade sit on the gurney while he continued to rupture internally, blood pooling in his brain. Another matter of hours elapsed, and he was finally taken over to another hospital, which was located in San Francisco, California. Unfortunately, he died right there in that ambulance. It was through medical neglect, fast medical neglect, that Khatari lost his life while in the clutches of California Department of Corrections. Real. It was not Khatari's death that actually merits the degree of importance that we place on his life. It was, in fact, his life that gave Khatari the stature that it did. Stature equitable to George. When George passed, it was Khatari that picked up the torch. Khatari was an example of what it was to be a New African revolutionary man. At that time, the organization was mired in ideological dissonance. You had some comrades who were staunch communists. Others were revolutionary black nationalists. You had other comrades still who were still stuck in the black nationalist stage, yet to evolve. You had other comrades who were staunch Muslims and only tangential supporters of revolutionary communism. You had some comrades that were revolutionary scientific socialists. They had already emerged and evolved beyond the communist phase. Khatari, while in AC, wrote a single document that embodied and would become the foundational document for the party's guidelines. It actually became the party's guidelines. In this document, at the very end of his life, Khatari had one unspoken yet vocal desire, and that was that we took what which was embodied in our guidelines and delivered it into the people in a concrete form. He charged each and every one of us to bring the revolution to the people. Perhaps one of the most significant documents that was expounded upon within these guidelines is a document that the comrade wrote called Without Justice. The reason why the document is so vitally important to both the broader revolutionary struggle, our people, and their understanding of their historical miscarriage that brought us to this point in history. It's even more important to understand why our positive objective, why each and every one of us understands without any reservation whatsoever that our revolutionary mission is never done until our will is complete and the light of freedom, justice, and equality shine down on all mankind like a star in the night, is because justice for the New African in America is an impossibility. Khatari said that the American judicial system is an overt, racist, and discriminating system of injustice, in contrast to being a magnification of the subtle racism in other American institutions. For example, education. Current expressions of job market. This subtle racism and discrimination that we may encounter when applying for a job or when seeking to access to higher learning is no longer subtle when one encounters the American judicial system. The contrast is stark. It's glaring. It's obvious. It's overt and intentionally so. It's essential usage on Black people, brown people, people who consider themselves Native Americans, poor white people, and unusable veterans. Surviving is to repress. It is to eliminate those unusable segments or undesirable segments of the population. Whenever the ruling class designates people, organizations, literature, etc., threatening or out of place, especially in its domain, it sets in motion first its malicious order of fascist machinery. What we mean by that is it's police, FBI, it's SSU, it's ISU, it's NSA, or some program androids with the same function. These quasi-government protectors of the people begin maneuvers to repress or totally wipe out the people, their organizations, their revolutionaries, by brutal, bloody, violent attacks. The assaults and murders are justified by the state. Many of us have been so thoroughly compromised by the capitalist arrangement that we look upon these freedom fighters and instead we refer to them as terrorists. Some of us forget the sacrifices that they even made. And oftentimes we don't understand why they made those sacrifices, especially today. The degree of relative liberty to express oneself, both politically and culturally in this country, and the continued efforts to curtail that expression of political power or cultural freedom by the fascist order is a direct result of the sacrifices made by freedom fighters. But why is it that New Africans in America, under the current system, could never be free? Khatari actually broke that down in perhaps the most eloquent terms I've ever encountered. And it's one of the reasons this precious brother, by each and every one of us, must never be forgotten and always honored. Comrade stated, we will concede to the fact that the American Constitution is a work of art. It's an impartial document of logic that, with reason, if adhered to equally, could serve the interests of justice. However, at the same time, it is a worthless document because it is not adhered to equally, and being logic is equivocal and open to semantical abstraction into oblivion. What this comrade meant was the Constitution in its current form has never been applied as written or equally to every person inside of this nation without degree or magnitude in alteration. What he meant by that was what is law today can be ruled unconstitutional tomorrow, simply by the turn of a phrase. The notion of constitutionality, the notion of what is a right and what is not a right, is only a gavel fall away from being changed on any given moment. Now, before New Africans in America can even conceive of a relationship with the current dominant power system, the current government, which is equal, you have to understand what equality is. Before we can advocate for justice, we must have a working knowledge of what justice actually is. Justice, as defined by Khatari and thus by the party, is the upholding of human rights, transferred to a common power apex through a mutual agreement of two individuals or two groups of individuals. In this definition, we see the words human and rights, neither of which have been conferred to New Africans in America. Webster's New School and Office Dictionary defines justice as the quality of being just, rectitude, or dealing with others impartially. In both opinions of justice, we find justice already established. Let's go a little deeper into this, to the point where a contract between people is drawn up to maintain the rights of all equal. Well, this contract is only an abstraction or completely absent. Even when such an agreement between two people, principally in America, there must be some type of coercive force guaranteed to cost far more than could possibly be gained by someone transgressing the contract made. But was there ever a contract between New Africans and the United States of America? No. We were brought from sovereign nations in chains on slave ships, the first of which, USS Jesus, hit these shores in 1619. From that day to this day, we have never, ever engaged in a mutual agreement between the United States and our people to determine what is or isn't justice. No. They had a war between agrarian capitalists and industrial capitalists. The industrial capitalists won and told all of those who were prior to this mere shadow, our people, that, hey, you are now citizens of the United States of America, subject to our laws, those second-class citizens. Though you will be subject to the supreme law of the land, in this case, the Constitution, it will not be conferred upon you equally, ever. You never had a hand in drafting. Keep in mind, when the founding fathers drafted the Constitution, when John Hancock, Adams, and Franklin developed this document, our people weren't even humans. In the eyes of this nation, we were property. No different than a mule, a wagon, or a hoe. We was no different than a shovel. Yet they already drafted what the confines of justice would look like. We had no input on that. There was no mutual agreement between our people. Let's go a step further. There are very reasons why no agreement has been constituted between the American Euro white man and the New African in the United States. American exploiters of the African continent, past and present, racists of the Babylonian Empire, have inflicted more pain, committed more crimes against New Africans than they can or are willing to atone for by their deaths. We could actually kill every last one of these people, and it wouldn't equate the amount of our people that have been slaughtered at their hands. It couldn't balance the scales, ever. When they wrong us, and this happens daily, what is necessary, Khatari taught us, is to have your own form of coercive force. He referred to them as shock forces. These shock forces are designed to ensure that your rights are enforced, not by the apparatus which erected your injustice and the violation of your rights, but by you yourselves, by your comrades, by you. Comrade expounded on several historical examples of New Africans resisting against violations of their rights by the very individuals who were empowered to defend those rights. A lot of y'all are listening to my voice right now aren't as old as me. Children not as old as Khatari. So some of these examples you will not have heard of before, but I want you to research. Michelle McGee attests to this. Desi Woods, Gary Tyler, and since we could write endless names, I'll just pull up Desi Woods. Desi Woods was a sister who was driving home from a hard day's work. She was pulled over by a white highway patrol. This highway patrolman proceeded to pull this sister out of the car, put her in the back seat of his car, and rape her. This sister got hold to his gun and killed this raping racist pig. And they sought to convict this sister for defending herself. In 1973, two new African guerrillas, Ernest Graham and Eugene Allen, were charged with the assault and murder of a cop at DVI Tracy. This is in 73. After that murder, the director of the Department of Corrections, Khatari Procuna, said they were members of Scott Jamal, which you all know as the Black Gorilla family, and that the murder was part of the BGF plot to kill one guard at every prison in California in retaliation for the murder of George Jackson. Graham and Allen stood trial in Stockton in 1974, and they got a hung jury. The case was being moved to San Francisco. The state put on several guards to testify. One said that all black people look alike. Couldn't tell them apart. But his identification of these two cats was positive. Another guard said that he didn't see the actual assault, but his testimony gained strength when he continued, quote, "I know those two niggas did it." Then a white ex-con who got released because of this testimony said, "I don't remember any of the details. I don't have any idea what part of the tier it happened on. All I remember is those two men killed that guard." The verdict was guilty. Sentenced death. Even though there wasn't a death penalty at the time in the state of California, the sentence didn't exist. The death penalty had long since been outlawed in this state. But in this case, it was reerected. The legislation voted one that proved shortly unconstitutional. Even two death row prisoners' sentences were commuted to life. It didn't change the fact that the trial wasn't fair. It didn't change the fact that those brothers received that trial, received that fate of a life in prison without justice. Khatari's own case is another example. Khatari was charged with assault. He refused to cooperate with these cops. He wouldn't even go to the courtroom because he knew what was going to happen. After meeting with some of the other comrades, he went ahead and agreed to participate. At which time his attorney had no defense whatsoever devised for this brother. He was convicted of first-degree murder. Some 5 years later, Khatari proved his attorney did not even attempt to defend him in the case and helped the state suppress evidence to convict him. Evidence that would have proved his innocence. Khatari proved in the court of law that his conviction was unconstitutional. Another court voided that conviction. But the court that ruled the conviction unconstitutional later ruled that what amounted to saying Khatari waived his right to a fair trial. These examples, George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, could go on ad nauseum, are an unbroken line of injustice against our people. Khatari articulated this in such a way that we all understood that this system cannot be reformed. We understood that these injustices would happen perpetually until such time as there's a victorious revolutionary change. Our existing reality and history reveal our social conditions have never changed to any appreciable degree, resulting from decisions handed down by courts in this country. Even now, you have every legislature in the country seeking to devise ways to ensure that we are not taught our history in schools, that we are not able to participate in their elections, that the disproportionate distribution of wealth, privilege, and opportunity in this society remains as it is. Khatari's life was an example of resistance. It was an example of developing a higher form of resistance, an organized form of resistance. That comrade never compromised, even though he knew full well at some point they would kill him. In his case, they got the opportunity when he accidentally ran into that wall, that pipe in that wall. They gave him the opportunity, and they took it. But what that comrade did while he was alive, reorganized some of the most advanced elements in the revolutionary struggle in this country to emerge what they are today. It is through Khatari's example that the George Jackson University exists. It's through Khatari's example that there is an autonomous infrastructure mission. It's through Khatari's example that the Silent Alert Network exists. It's through Khatari's example that there's a George Jackson Grassroots Collective. It's through Khatari's example that we form and celebrate Black August Memorial. It is through Khatari's example that every day we breathe, outside of those 31 days of August, we are seeking to advance our people through Black August resistance. Each and every one of you hearing my voice should know that this man was the example of the new African guerrilla. It is one each and every one of us seek to emulate and advance. So should we all. Long live the spirit, comrade Jeffrey Khatari Gault. Long live the Black Dragon.